Hey guys, welcome to week 2, session 3. Today we're going to be working on the If I Wasn't Afraid, I Would layout. If you haven't already, go ahead and check in on the spiral scale and the spiritual baggage check. And then we're going to head over to If I Wasn't Afraid. This layout is really good for naming your fears. I'm going to show you the filled out layout. This is a sample from last year. If I wasn't afraid, I would tell someone the truth. I would admit I was wrong. I would move out of the country. I would say I want to break up. Those are some very basic examples, but I want to go into each bubble and kind of elaborate on them a little bit. This layout came to me when I was in therapy, and it was something that we would just journal about, and we would just call it out. And for me, a lot of it was throat chakra activation, realizing that I didn't feel like I could verbalize what I needed to say. I didn't feel like the emotions could come to me. So once I started learning the emotional spiral scale and just becoming more familiar with it, verbalizing my fears became a lot easier. So this one is just super basic layout. So I would always start with the say. If I wasn't afraid, I would say, and it could be something like a goal or a dream. Like if I wasn't afraid, I would say that, Mom, I wish you would get sober. Example. I would say, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of examples right off the bat, but you guys get the idea that you would just put out something that's very fearful to you, that you would just put it out there without asking yourselves any questions. So for me, confronting about my mother's addiction, that would be a confrontation for me. So that's going to stir up a lot of root trauma, and that's going to make me go straight back down my spiral scale. So that's where you need a lot of your tools to work through the bubbles, because then you would go to the next one. What would I do? So if I told her that, then what would I do? Like, based off of her responses. And what I would do, an example would be, I would be there for her however she needs me. Basic example. And then what I would admit to her that even though, we've been living together for a while, her drinking affects me. And then I would tell someone, hey, my mom needs help. So it's this whole cycle of running through it, of going through each bubble and finding something that applies to you. But sometimes the first thing it is that you need to say. What do you need to say? And then once you say it, all of the action, the doing, admitting, and telling someone, because you really need support and momentum to like help you get, the fear to go away. So that's the basis of the If I Wasn't Afraid, I Would. And this is a very basic cognitive behavior exercise you can do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. I would even say on a fear-based basis. Any fear you have, name it. Give it a page in your life book, write it down. And then as the other bubbles start to come to you, then you could go back to that page and write it down. So it could be a trauma from when you were 5, another page, a trauma from when you were 10, another page, a trauma from when you were graduated high school or something. And then sometimes you don't know how you're going to work that out. And that's usually what people go to therapy for. And they'll sit down with a therapist and they'll work through that thing. And the therapist has, on their page, the notes of the cycle. So this is just a quick way for you to just go through the back door of it and do it yourself and work through it and I say to give yourself a week to 3 months to work through something. Don't expect that overnight it's going to happen. If you're thinking about it on a daily basis, it's going to manifest itself. But you have to give it options. You have to give it tools and not let it sit and manifest and fester inside of you. So that's why giving it a page is a great idea, because you just name the fear, and it can be something like, I'm afraid, this is how I got to name what I wanted to say. I'm afraid my mom's going to die. And where did that fear come from? Well, I needed to tell her, you're an addict. And, and then it just starts going from there. But me naming the fear, I'm afraid my mom's going to die, that took me, you know, some time to come to that decision that that's where my anxiety was rooted in. So it's all about, you know, your vulnerability of how healed do you really want to be, and then to go through the steps of running through that. So I want to encourage you guys to give your space to do that. And then our homework for week 2, it'll be available down here to complete. I'd like you guys to go in there and just name your fears. In week 1, we went ahead and named the weeds. So this is how we go ahead and we start making a game plan to pull out the weeds. So next week we're going to be doing the letting go exercise, where we draw balloons and we learn this visual that I have of ideas and balloons and people's lives and their purposes, and we're gonna let some shit go. So I would like you guys to spend this time over this weekend, this next week even, and just really think about what's the root of the fear, so we can name it, and then we'll spend these next couple weeks filling in the bubbles and admitting, telling, doing, you know, making a game plan to get your garden going. So I want to thank you guys for joining. Thank you everyone who is on this call, and I'll see you guys next week.